Okay. Well, I'm Jack Travis.
Should I have more light on in the room?
No, I think you're good. And I'm talking to my little brother, Big Dave, Super Dave Travis, who is a mere 71, 70, yeah. And it is
Two, I think.
to what?
72.
You're 72. Oh, okay, yes. Well, I'm going to be 77 in a week. It is December 29 here in, no, 28 here in Australia, and December 27 there in Levering, Pellston, whatever, Michigan, the far northern
Levering, Michigan, near
and
Pellston.
you are on your lakeside mansion with the Christmas tree outside. We'd see the lake if it was daylight. And we're going to talk about our memories of growing up in Bluffton with our parents, with the idea that future grandkids, great grandkids might give a hoot and want to know. This kind of things I would love to be able to quiz mom and dad about. Dad did a massive genealogy with lots of names and births and so forth, but not much about who they are. I got a bunch of photos out of Seal's album that I think Auntie had. And otherwise, there's a lot of stuff I wish I knew about my ancestors that we can contribute a piece of it for our descendants. That's my idea. And I know Hannah's interested in this, and I think her two daughters will eventually be. Santa might someday. Does Beth give a hoot about your upbringings, or?
Probably not.
Well, anyway, I thought we'd start by, since I'm the older, I've got earlier memories, and then kick in where you pick up. So our parents were Boyd and Eloise. Eloise Frances Kellogg, born in 1913, February 25th. Dad was Boyd Wilson Travis, born in Westminster College, Fulton, Missouri. Note, I know how to say Missouri, just like Louisville. And he was born on December 26th, 1903, which meant birthdays were a non-event for him. We always gave him the same thing for Christmas and birthday. If you could even think of something that
he always got an extra prize. I thought he was made out better because we always got him something extra.
Well, yeah, but you don't get that special day like in the middle another time of year.
What did he care? All he wanted was some ice cream and cake.
So
like me.
Put your glasses on, you'll look just like him.
Yeah, that's all right.
So my earliest memories are Marcia, our sister, who was born in between us, July 20 of 1945. When I had to give up the crib and move into the, it was like a cot, a rollable cot, and Dad was putting a headboard on it. And
because we were at the other house there, weren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, we were living at 151 Kibler Street, 2 doors down from 141 Kibler Street that he built in the 50s, 1950. So yeah, that's my earliest memory. I do remember Mom going to the hospital for your birth. We talked about that there was going to be, we didn't know the gender at that point because that came a lot later. And I remember, grabbing her bags and rushing off to the hospital, and then she came home with you. And I was
screwed up your life for good.
Well, no, Marcia was the one that really screwed it up because suddenly I wasn't the king of the mountain anymore. But adding you didn't help much in terms of sibling
And
rivalry.
what the hell did I know? I'm just there.
What they didn't know was that 2.5 years is the worst possible spacing for kids. That the natural human and spacing is more like 5 years, but we were both about 2.5 years apart. So Marcia got to lose her centralness with your arrival, and the three of us pretty much got in each other's hair a lot when we had hair, and
I'd say normal brothers and sisters myself.
well, I've seen other siblings that got along a lot better than us. I do remember me smart mouthing and saying, you don't love us, and Mom saying, of course we love you, look at all the toys you have. And one other eventful moment I remember was we were up at near Prince Edward Island. We went on that. Do you remember that vacation to the Gaspé Peninsula up in Canada?
Oh yeah.
We were all fighting in the back of the car, and we were pulling into a motel, and Mom made some comment about what rotten kids we were, and I said, well, you made us this way. Not a wise thing to say. But we did have some good times. My favorite memories
I
were
hope you
going
got whipped.
no, we didn't get whipped. We get spanked, but Albert, cousin Albert, would get the razor strop, and because Uncle Abe was a pretty mean guy. Don't know about.
Yeah, but we don't need to go down all these roads. Let's make this more interesting for whoever wants to watch it.
Well,
You know,
we can go up.
So now, if it wasn't perfect tough, I mean, our parents had a lot rougher than we've ever had it growing up.
They
And they didn't have all the books and everything else, and they're just trying to survive.
Yeah, the Depression had a big influence on both of them. And of course, Mom's mother died when she was, I tried to work out, at first I thought she was a teenager, but then when I worked out the dates, she would have been a little older. But
We're breaking
mother,
up. Is this time out?
Yeah.
You're breaking up a lot. Is this being recorded or what?
It's being recorded, but the recording will be okay because it's going straight to the cloud. I lost you a little bit too, but I think it'll still be okay. That's why I record to the cloud, because we have shaky internet connections that'll affect it. But if it gets too bad, we'll have to do something. But yeah, my favorite memories were going down to Louisville for Christmas and Thanksgiving and Aunt Beth.
On the bumpy road.
Oh, the roller coaster stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to go that way, and then we got to stop at that one park where we went around that spiral slide.
Right. That was Newcastle.
That was the highlight.
Yeah, and we'd always have egg salad sandwiches and jelly sandwiches for lunch. That was the lunch break. I think that was Newcastle, the town where there's a tree growing out of the county seat, the courthouse.
Yeah.
But they had a spiral slide when they were rare things, and that was the only one we knew of. But then after that, we'd go down. We'd cross the Ohio River at Madison, and there was a stretch of the road that was like a roller coaster. It was near a weapons testing site. This is Route 6 in Indiana, which was Dad's back way before the interstate, avoiding going down the Dixie Highway through Cincinnati. So, yeah, what do you remember of visits?
Going down there, you mean?
Yeah, and Louisville.
In Louisville? Well, I just remember that part of the drive going down there, and then one of the times coming home, he got pulled over for speeding, and you know, the poor police officer's going, so I see you're a doctor, you're probably in a hurry to get back to some patients or something, right? And Dad goes, no. And well, I'm sure you got some something that's important medical wise back home. And he goes, no, I was just driving home. I was speeding, and mom's over there trying to kick him, going, you dummy. So he got a ticket, I think. He might have gotten a warning. I don't know. But
I don't remember that one.
yeah. But I always liked that bumpy road the best. I was really bummed when they quit it. When they got rid of the bumps in it, because your stomach could go up in your throat.
Well, what's weird
it was that
you would
right,
get car
just
sick,
the right
though.
amount of. Well, not on a straightaway like that.
Okay.
I don't think I got car sick unless I was reading.
No,
If I had my head down, I'd get car sick. Huh?
We used to have to stop and let you get out. Not when you were reading.
Well, I didn't read in a car, but
No. When we'd play count cows, that was Mom's distraction to keep us from fighting in the back seat. 3 of us in the back seat.
I don't blame her.
And then, do you remember riding up the ledge?
The what?
Riding up on the back ledge behind the back seat. This was before seat belts. Sleeping up on the ledge.
No.
That was my favorite thing at night, to be asleep up on there was a ledge behind the back seat underneath the rear window in these older.
Okay, yeah.
40s and early 50s cars. And then we had a 54 Olds, and Dad had seat belts installed. He had to get them out at the airport. And that was the first seat belts in Bluffton. This would have been about 56. And I think it's because he saw all these people in the emergency room that had gone through windshields and stuff. And
well, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, long before they were required. And he was very progressive that way. Another story about him, speaking
he used
of...
To carry,
he used what?
He used to carry a picture in his wallet of a guy that went through the windshield that he stitched up, had 97 stitches in his face. And I think I even carried a copy of it after a while. Sure made a believer in you about seatbelts.
I didn't know that, huh? I do remember when there was a crash out at Gratz's Crossing, and there was an overturned caboose. I think a truck or something hit the caboose and knocked it over. And he went out after he'd stitched the guy up at the hospital.
You froze. You froze.
Are we freezing? I'm going to trust it's still recording okay.
You froze for quite a while there. You're talking about that train wreck at Gratz's Crossing?
Yeah, and he went out and rooted through the overturned caboose and found the guy's glasses amidst all the ashes. They had a wood stove for heat, and of course it was upside down. It was filled with ashes and stuff, but he got the guy's glasses for him. That was the kind of thing Dad would do. So farm boy from Missouri, and went to medical school. He
probably enjoyed going. He probably enjoyed going back and looking at the train wreck more, because before he was worried about who was hurt.
Well, I think it was dark, but yes, if anyone doesn't know,
probably would have been by then.
A railroader, model railroader, and we went all over Ohio before the steam engines were taken off service. He had a tape recorder and an inverter in the car that we could run it from, and we'd go up to Fostoria and various places. The nickel plate went through Bluffton, and he'd record a lot of steam engines there. You ever go down to the tower on Sunday morning when they did the switching on Sundays, because there wasn't a local? Do you remember that?
No, I never knew about that.
Yeah, on Sundays they had to stop the mainline engine and pick up the cars themselves. So he'd get all these sounds of the steam engine stopping and starting and coupling and stuff. And it was an early Sunday morning before church.
I didn't know about that.
He played the recordings with the model railroad. That hopefully there's.
Well, with the model railroad, and also when he had the movies that he made, then he used those recordings to be soundtracks with the movies.
Yeah.
And I was the sound man in the back of the '98 Oldsmobile when we went over to. He got on his movies. He has a doubleheader coming from Lima that the tower guy called him up and told him about it. So
Oh,
we went and
right.
sat on the overpass over there by Blue Lick Road, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we sat there and we were waiting for the train to come, and then you could see the black smoke coming. So we got in the car and shot down the on ramp, and Mom was driving. She was right beside the engine, and Dad's filming, and I'm holding the microphone in the back with the tape recorder and trying to be out of the wind. Dad's sitting in the back seat. Mom's driving. It's really good footage. And then we get to Beaver Dam, and Mom goes, "We're coming up to Beaver Dam and the bypass. What do I do?" And Dad goes, "Floor it." So she did, because we were going 70 at the time, keeping up with the engine. And she went around there, it had to be 80, 85. And we pulled up right even with them on the other side of Beaver Dam and just picked up filming again. It was pretty cool. You know, mom was ready to have a heart attack, but what the heck, got to do your job. So.
Yeah, I didn't, that was after I left home, I guess. But I remember when the Alleghenies were being built at Lima, they would come through Bluffton backwards, and he'd get a call from his friend at the plant that there was one coming through, because they couldn't turn them around. They built them facing west in Lima, and they had no turntable big enough to turn them around. So they backed them all the way to Fostoria where they could turn them around. And so they'd come through Bluffton backwards, and he'd go down and close the office and go down and take pictures. And there's one of me sitting on the cow catcher of one of the big Alleghenies. Those are the last steam engines they built. The huge.
Were they the last ones? Okay.
Yeah, because diesel was taking over, but they built 12.
I think the Berkshire. I thought the Berkshire was the last one they built.
No, Berkshires are a lot older,
sure.
I think.
But they still were making them, because one of the Berkshires they got done and never went into service.
Oh.
And I think that's the one that's over in Lima in that park, because it never got used for service, I don't think.
Didn't know that.
John Keller was showing me some of that stuff in the old days. He was a conductor, and
wasn't he the guy that worked
jack of all
trades
on the trains? He went to Bluffton College, but he lived in Lima and did a lot. Huh?
I've forgotten the name of the guy that
he worked for the nickel plate. He worked at the nickel plate.
Yeah, we're getting so much delay here on this connection that it's going to be interesting how the recording comes out.
I was wondering about that. Is it because of my Wi-Fi's crummy or something, or what?
I think it's your Wi-Fi, and it's also just the lag of we're on opposite sides of the planet, and there's always a delay. And so it's easy to start talking before you realize the other person's talking. But other memories, we talked about, railroading was Dad's real passion. And he had a model railroad even before they moved into the 151 Kibler Street, the railroad I remember. And then he built the big one at 141 that you've got stored away and may or may not ever be seen again, but there's pictures of it. Do you have memories of the farm with Granddad and Grandma and Auntie?
That would be just mostly, I think it was Granddad's funeral, and they were trying to keep me entertained. I was maybe 5-ish or so, or 4.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It was 52. He died in 52, so you'd have been 5.
So I was born in 47, so I was 4 years old, I guess. And they were trying to keep me entertained, and they got me a cap gun, but they didn't have any caps. So they were scrounging all over trying to get caps. And then when they got caps, I'm running around shooting this cap gun, and everybody's going, "Well, that's okay. He's just a kid," and I'm going, "What's the problem?" So, and that was about it. So
That was out
Not
at the farmhouse, wasn't it?
out at the farmhouse. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because that farmhouse is now a parking lot or across from a Walmart parking lot. We saw it
yeah, Walmart, I think. Yeah.
from the
So,
parking lot before they tore it down, but on English Station Road and at the corner of what's the other road?
just behind Walmart there in Louisville. I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
outside of Middletown. Um, well, I have a lot of happy memories
you
from.
can bore everybody to death. They're going to click this thing off in a heartbeat. So,
You're frozen. I hope it's recording.
you're stuck with your mouth open in the video. I don't know what's
you,
happening.
you too, but
So I was
presumably.
going to say in Bluffton, in the first house in Bluffton, I don't remember too much, but I remember running around in the house with a big, I think mom was making something with fabric, and I had all these pieces tied together, and I was running around trying to get the cat to chase it, and I was really upset. You couldn't run in a circle in the house. I had to go up one way up the top of the stairs, circle back, and go backtrack. So I was really excited in the new house when you could run in a circle in the new house. So,
And we could run in a circle in. Somebody just walked by outside, unless that was a reflection of Barb.
no, it's a reflection of Barb, and
Okay.
she was taking a shower, and now she's going upstairs, I think.
Well, Granddad's house, you could run in a circle, but you had to go through the kitchen to do it. And like with what, 5 cousins and 3 of us, or 4 cousins, we'd get pretty wild, and they hated us going through the kitchen while they were cooking. But that
Gee, I
was.
wonder why.
And there was Auntie was living with them, grandmothers, and Granddad was John Edgar Travis, a mission Presbyterian minister farmer, and Mary Wilson Travis, his wife, and her sister Agnes Wilson, who we knew as Auntie, who lived with them for all of their adult life that I know of. And she outlived them considerably. They both died in 52 and 53. And you remember her 90th birthday when we put 90 candles on the cake at Aunt Rag's house and lit them?
Barely, probably.
It turned into a bonfire, and it coated the entire cake with wax. We had to peel the wax off the frosting.
I don't remember that. Yeah.
It was a torch. That was a bad mistake. But do you remember the Lapsley's house when it was still in St. Matthews? The little house?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, not too much.
Then they moved out.
I never got to stay there. That's where I stayed out at Albert and Mary Jo's.
Yeah, in Middletown.
Yeah. Uncle Abe liked me though.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he seemed to. He's really gruff, but he'd take me in the other room sometimes and show me some stuff in his office. And, it just depended, but
Interesting.
Yeah.
So growing up,
I wasn't a holy terror like you guys.
Yeah. Well, Albert and Mary Jo were pretty well disciplined, let's put it. Mary Jo being the older one. Let's go back to Bluffton.
I meant to tell you, now that you're mentioning that, she's had some health issues lately. We'll talk about that another time. So
yeah, I knew she had something. Was it Parkinson's type or something? But back in 151 Kibler, do you remember all 3 of us in that bedroom with the 3? You were in the crib, and Marcia on the side next to Schultz's, and I had the side next to the stairway. It was a knotty pine paneled room with a blue linoleum floor that Bill Edwards had put a compass into the floor. He cut out black and white linoleum, lino they call it here, and it had a compass. Do you remember that?
No, I just remember I was in that cot in a corner or something like that, and I got stuck in the sleeping bag once, and I was sure you guys zipped it up on me. Somehow I got reversed in it, and you probably did, but they swore that didn't happen. So,
well, we
I
did
thought I
gang
was going
up
to
on you.
suffocate.
How badly traumatized you were from?
I sure thought I was suffocating. I barely got out of that thing. I still remember that from heart not being able to breathe. So who knows?
I don't remember that at all. It was
Yeah,
in the
it would, didn't happen to you. It happened to me. So that's why I remember it. But I don't know what the deal was. I probably just got screwed up and got in there somehow in the bag and turned around or something. But
So this was in the old house?
yeah.
Because we moved to the
And
new
I
house.
remember that, and I remember maybe I got the measles or chicken pox. I think I either got the measles or chicken pox down there, and then that running around when I was sick, and that's about all I remember from there. And then it actually becomes hard because then in the home movies there's stuff there, and you sort of think you remember something from the home movies, but you really don't. So
Yeah. Well, and you converted them all into DVDs, which Hannah has my copy of, and she was going to put them, translate them to something else. I converted a bunch of them into QuickTime movies, so they're on my computer. But that was a wonderful Christmas gift. What, about 10 years ago you did that? And
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, we used to get out the movie projector a couple times in the winter and show the old movies, and that was Sunday night entertainment. You remember when we got
Dad did a real good job with movies, I thought.
Yeah. There were fewer of you when you came along than of me, because they were getting bored with shooting movies. You got shortchanged on the
I guess I probably did. And then there's a ton of them with Betsy. I didn't get to do I did some of that. And then I said, boy, there's a million of them with Betsy, I think. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah.
I was going to say something about movies and Betsy. When you remember when Betsy was born.
Yeah.
That she was known as George for the longest time before we didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, so it was George.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was the joke. I think Mom, I don't know where she picked the name, but she was carrying George. And
got to move my position here a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had the dog Tippy, which she brought home. Do you remember that? She found him down at the, I think it was the intersection in front of the grade school at Church Street in Jackson. And she brought him home to
her home
rescue. And she, Dad didn't want a dog, but she eventually talked him into it. So we wound up with a dog. And
well, she was just trying to save the dog. She thought it was lost, but then they advertised forever and nothing ever happened.
Yeah, was that it? I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then years later, whoever Mom found to come over and help with the cleaning on Thursdays or whatever, the lady always said, "Boy, that dog sure looks like my so-and-so's dog." And then Mom was out at their house out in the country one time and went, "My word, they look identical." So, and they knew that the last dog in that litter was a female, and they must have just turned it loose. So they were actually brother and sister, but we didn't know till the end like that.
I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah. So, because the dog had been hanging around out at the college and downtown, and then Mom saw it downtown about ready to get hit, so she opened the door and the dog jumped in and she brought it home. and then that was it.
So
So
you remember that
and
story?
you know that's where the famous saying comes from. You know where that's where the famous saying comes from, don't you? Apparently, I was out there on the porch with the dog on the screened-in porch out there. It had to be in the summer, and Mom was apparently in the dining room or whatever. But I was there petting the dog and talking to the dog or whatever. And I said, oh doggy, if I ever have a chance to have a doggy, I hope it'll be as beautiful as you."
I didn't know that.
And she must have told that story to Barb 500 times. So I've had to listen to, oh doggy, if I ever.
So then that's when you decide to keep it?
Yeah. Then they decided to keep it. Yeah.
Oh.
You didn't care about a dog, but Tippy was a big part of my life growing up. I really enjoyed her, so, but she was a big
advantage
for me growing up. So
yeah, you were of a good age for that.
I was just a deprived kid in a small town in Ohio with an older brother that was too damn smart and tried to do stuff to me, and an older sister that tried to suck up to you, didn't want anything to do with me. So I was left with a dog, but that was fine with me. So what the heck? So,
yeah. Well,
so that's where I learned to have an appreciation of pets and dogs or whatever. But, I didn't mind the cats, but the dog was the best for me. So,
yeah.
But, and Dad would just sit there and pat her on the head and go, nice doggy,
Yeah, he didn't get into the dogs that much or the cats. Oh, do you remember the white rats?
Well, yeah, a little bit, mostly from the videos of the movies.
Yeah. I remember the first two were Phoebe and Snow White, which I think were named, well, I don't remember why, but one of them was sitting in Dad's lap while he was reading out in the back porch, quietly chewing a hole in his pants. He got up and there was a big hole right where his pocket was. That didn't go down too well. And then one of them, they got little sister, it was, who was the third white rat, and then she had 10 babies.
I remember the babies, yeah.
Yeah, and she wasn't supposed to be pregnant, but she was.
I remember the movie of the babies. I don't know which.
Yeah. Well, more things about Mom and Dad besides the model railroad.
Remember Benji, the raccoon? What we have, 2 raccoons?
Well, yeah, the raccoons were Sandy and Rascal. One Rascal was a rescue. No, Sandy. They were both rescues. I think a hunter had killed their mother or something, and Mom raised them. But before that were the rabbits, because Elliot's dog, it was a Dalmatian, had stirred up a rabbit's nest and killed the mother, and there were like 4 or 5 babies that were homeless that Mom rescued, and she fed them with a dropper, and one of them survived, and that was Benji. I think the others, they were Flopsy and Mopsy or whatever.
I think Benji was a raccoon.
No, Benji was a rabbit from the story.
And they dropped Benji off out in the woods out there?
Benji's Woods, yeah, but that was the rabbit. The raccoons were
Really?
Sandy and Rascal, and they were both rescues too from hunters that knew Mom was a sort of wildlife rescue operation. She had a reputation, I guess. And originally we had Rascal, and he had a big cage out back, and then Sandy was a little one that came along, and so the 2 of them were together, but they were never domesticated enough. They bit one of us, I think, and then they got, I don't know what happened to them, whether they got put in the woods too. But Benji's Woods was the rabbit. That was out just towards the cannery on Bentley Road. No, wasn't called Bentley then. It had another name. I think it's Bentley now, going north. We used to always toot the horn when we go by Benji's Woods, because
Yeah. So is that on that same road that went by the cannery, right, or whatever?
yeah, just before the cannery on. And the cannery being a big factor in that, Dad had a big freezer, and we'd freeze a lot of corn and strawberries, and no, not strawberries. They preserved the strawberries,
Rhubarb,
raspberries,
rhubarb
rhubarb,
and applesauce.
applesauce, and we'd have big barrels of apples in the garage in the winter that you could keep, most of the winter. And one of us would get elected to peel the apples with a peeler, and Mom would make a apple pie, and but there was a lot of frozen applesauce, and what else? Corn, beans.
I don't remember the barrel of apples. I forgot about that.
Yeah, there were big barrels that would seal up. But then the cannery was for green beans. What else? Oh, they made cider out there too, and we had we just had a plum tree, because we had plums in a can one winter, and they hadn't been cooked properly, and they started exploding on the shelf down in the basement. And the what do we call that little room where the cans were, that was kept lower temperature, something or other.
Oh, in the back there? Yeah.
Yeah, back behind the furnace. This isn't going to mean anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, the exploding plums, that was one winter when they hadn't cooked them long enough. But the cannery was a big deal. Take loads of stuff out there, and remember shucking corn.
I didn't realize that it was Dad's bean. I didn't realize it was the Dad's beans and stuff that the cannery did.
Yeah, we'd take them out there, and they'd cook them up and can them.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think he froze peas but canned beans. Don't remember why. And then we were members of the Presbyterian Church. We're down in the middle of town, and I played the organ for my entertainment during high school. I'd go over there for practice at lunch hour. Being an introvert, I didn't relate too well to the lunch hour, so I'd go practice the organ. And what did you do during lunch hours at school when you were in high school?
I sure as hell didn't go play an organ.
Well, you were the football jock.
I ate lunch as fast in grade school. I remember eating lunch as fast as I could so that you could run all the way back to the elementary school and then start playing kickball. There was probably never a meal that I wasn't the first or the second one back to the playground, and if somebody got a head start on me, I usually outran them anyway. So
I didn't know that. So you had
that had to be good for your digestive tract.
Yeah. Well, I was the last class, 6th grade, in the old Victorian school that they tore down that summer. But you must have done 1st grade.
Yeah, I think I remember 1st grade and kindergarten or something like that.
Yeah,
and here are my 2 stories from those days. What was the deal? They would it must have been 1st grade. We were learning to read, and whoever that 1st grade teacher was, Mrs. Risser, maybe.
It would have been Murray or Bixel.
Probably Bixel then. I don't know.
No. But Steepleton was I think you had Steepleton.
Yeah, Steepleton. Yeah. So here you are learning how to read, and they're sitting there going, okay. And Jane goes up the stairs, in some building or stores, and so then she's going, so how many flights of stairs did she go up? And everybody's guessing 1 and 2 and 5, 8, no, and everybody's wrong. And she goes 3 because it says up. And I'm this little kid going, you idiot, there's nowhere in there that means that's 3 flights of stairs. I'm this little kid going, man, you can't believe these adults. There's something else. And then they try to teach you how to cross the road at the intersection, with the traffic guards, and they give you this big explanation of you stand on the corner and you look at the light, and when the light turns green is when you cross the road, And I'm going, you mean when the light turns red, you cross the road? Oh, no, no, no. When the light turns green, you cross the road. And I rode in the car enough with mom and dad. And when the light turns green, the car goes and runs you over. And when you're trying to cross the road, you wait till the light's red for the cars, and then you cross the road. And for some dumb reason, the other direction, and never could see my point of view. And I just always went, you guys are idiots, And I said, I know what'll kill me and what won't. The hell with what you're saying. I mean, I never could believe that they would preach that,
Well, you carried this into your pilot training and became a Air Force pilot and commercial pilot, and you never got run over.
I guess not, Shoot.
Well,
there was something else that sparked another memory, but I remember like in first or second grade, the art teacher, and so you had to draw a picture with crayons or watercolors or whatever. You had to draw a picture. You had to make the grass there. You had to put in the grass, and then you had to put a sun in the corner, and you did all this stuff, and maybe you put a person or a house in it, and then they wanted you to put the sky in, and I remember coloring the sky in, and I started at the top and started coming down, and I went, let's see, the sky goes all the way to the ground because that's the horizon line. So I just put blue all the way down to the edge of the grass, about in the middle of the page. And I saved a little spot for the sun and had it yellow, but I didn't have the little star pattern on it like they always did in things. I just sort of blended it in so it was brighter. And I get done, and she's holding my drawing up, and she's going, well, why does yours look like this, David? Everybody else has the blue at the very top, and then it's all white in the middle, and then there's green where the grass is, and she's going, why did you do that? Like I did something wrong. And I'm like, because that's the way it looks in the real world. Why wouldn't I do it like that? Once again, I'm going, what's with these people? But then she did say that I did it right, but she was just shocked that I did it on my own.
Ah, so you were vindicated.
So
good for you.
You remember those paintings where across the very top spot was green, and I looked at everybody else's and I couldn't believe that's how they drew them. But why would you do that? So
yeah. Well,
anyway,
and we had religious education with Mrs. Lobby, which was totally unconstitutional, separation of church and state, but they went ahead and did it anyway.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. When I was in fourth grade, there were two classmates that had exemptions, and they would stay up in the classroom, and we'd go down in the basement of the old school building, and there was a little room with low ceiling that they gave to Mrs. Lobby for religious education, and they were pounding Bible stuff into us in public school on public school time. And that was about the same time when they changed the Pledge of Allegiance, and they added one nation under God, which is also unconstitutional, but I remember that. And they stuck that in. We had to learn it differently. We'd start every morning with our hand on our heart and salute the flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. In fourth grade, anyway, we had a flag hanging on the side of the classroom. Do you remember any of that, or?
A little bit, someplace, yeah.
But and that was around the time. Huh?
Did that scar your life? It didn't bother me.
No, it was just, I remember it, and it was only years later that I realized that it was unconstitutional and still is. But uh, what I also remember was at the same time was when the flags changed. You know, there were 48 stars originally, and then Alaska, I think, was, well, no,
Yeah.
Hawaii was 49. So then instead of by 6 by 8, it became 7 by 7, but that only lasted a year. And then Alaska came in and they had it staggered. What it's so many rows of 6 and so many rows of 7 makes 50. And then they tried bringing in Puerto Rico. And I'm convinced that one of the main reasons Puerto Rico's never achieved statehood, besides the racism of, well, they're not white, is that how would you put 51 stars in a rectangle?
Probably, yeah.
48, 49, and 50 all fit, but 51, no.
Huh.
So that was when they were shooters in Congress. Some Puerto Ricans got into the Capitol building and shot up, I think it was the House of Representatives, and they were really pissed off that they weren't going to get statehood. And I don't think that helped their cause, but
They
still,
shot up what?
the Congress. They, I think
They shoot
killed
some people?
Yeah, they shot some either senators or representatives. I'm not sure which. I have to look that up, but I remember it was under Truman that happened. So it had to have been before Ike was elected in '54. I remember the dad being a staunch Republican. We were building the screens for the screen porch on the new house, which had stood unfinished for several years. And he built the screens on trestles out in the backyard. And we were listening to the Republican convention where Eisenhower was nominated for the Republican ticket. And then in '60, you know, when it was Kennedy and Nixon, you know, Dad was all for Nixon, and my girlfriend at the time, Mary Smucker, they were Democrats, so I was getting the other ear. And I actually saw JFK in Lima. He did a run through Lima, and somehow or other I got over there. It wasn't at Dad's behest. I might have gone with the Smuckers, I don't know. But that was memories of. Oh, and then the floods and the railroad with the sewer backing up, and the pipes bursting, and all those.
Yeah, I just remember hearing about that.
Yeah, it got so cold one winter, the pipes burst under the kitchen and flooded the railroad, and we had to do a big mop-up operation. You don't remember the new house being built, probably. You were only, what, about
just a little bit. I remember Dad took me down there and walked me through it when it was just framed in.
Yeah.
That was interesting, I thought. So,
well,
I remember he had so I think that was him. He was telling about it. He said that supposedly had a sign there that at one door you walk into the house and it says, "We like it," you know, and you go, you know how everybody walks through a new house, and check it out. And when you walked out the other side door in the front there, it said, "We don't like yours either." You know.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't know whether he actually did that or he just related that story that he wanted to do that, because everybody walks through something and then they have all these different opinions, and the people who build it, you know, we don't like yours either.
I doubt that he'd actually do that, but I do remember. Do you remember that he had hernia operations, and he shaved himself, his inguinal area, and he wrote right side and don't look on the other side, or something like that, with a magic marker for the nurses.
I think it was wrong side or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then the other was what did the other one say? Watch it, I think it was.
Yeah,
be
something like
careful,
that.
Yeah. But he had a good sense of humor that a lot of people didn't know. He got a nurse in trouble one year because probably when I was in high school or whatever, but there was a big thing about this one cute nurse that was pretty young, apparently, and most of the nurses weren't very exciting, as I remembered, And so this one cute nurse, he walked in, she was like assisting in the surgery or something like that, and he walked in and went by her and he tugged on the side of her skirt, like because she'd been chewed out for her skirts were too short, and he'd heard about it. So he tugged on her skirt, and then apparently the next day or something like that, she was getting in trouble. They goes, well, even Dr. Travis noticed your skirt was too short. And my dad was just making a joke out of the whole damn thing.
I remember now there was a nurse he called Brown Eyes. Was that it?
I don't know.
Yeah. And they used to bet on the sex of babies. They bet a Coke, and they had a Coke machine in the lobby of the hospital that was still a nickel, long after it was a dime everywhere else. And the Coke company apparently didn't know about it, and so they kept quiet. And he was a Coke addict. Every afternoon he'd come back from the office at 4 or 5, and that was one thing Mom and Dad did that I didn't fully appreciate till later. She got him to sit down and they'd have a Coke together, and because she was a busy stay-at-home mom, and he'd been off, at the hospital in the morning and surgery and the office in the afternoon, and they'd sit and talk, and we'd often sit at their feet, and then if we were lucky, we'd get the last drop of Coke out of the bottom of the bottle. And because we didn't get soft drinks till we were older.
Darn right.
All these kids drinking so much now. And the other thing that I really came to appreciate is that he'd take a nap after lunch. Almost every day, he'd take a 20-minute nap, and before he went down to the office.
He's a pretty damn smart guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lived to be 94.
Didn't matter how late he was, he would always close his eyes for at least 10 minutes. If he was a half hour late, he'd still close his eyes for 10 minutes. And I can see it because that naps really always regenerated me, but I never wanted to go over 20 to 25 minutes.
Yeah.
After that, it didn't do anything. It just made me feel worse. But I mean, he was really smart on that.
Well, and one of his things was he grew prize-winning apples every year for the whatever that contest was, the garden, flowers and fruit contest, and his apples would always win because he'd thin them. He'd say, if there are 5 apples and you pick off the 4 little ones, the 5th one will have as much flesh as the 5 would have had, but it's all in one apple. So he'd mercilessly thin the apples as well as prune the trees, and he'd win these prizes. Yeah. And for the doctor to be selling apples is like early preventive medicine, huh? An apple a day. Kind of a conflict of interest, but he didn't need the business. So his between the model railroad and the garden and the apple trees and the different kinds of berries, the raspberries, the strawberries. You remember transplanting, putting strawberries in every spring or every other year when he'd move the bed? We'd
a little bit, yeah. Not much.
He'd take all the runners and move them to the other side, because apparently after 2 years strawberries don't do as well. So he'd move the strawberry bed from one side of the garden to the other, and our job was to dig them in and water them. And for some reason, I remember doing it at night or at dusk. And he'd spray all of his apples, organic garden, except for the
probably spray. Just running out of time.
Are your batteries running low or what?
No, I don't think so. Why?
I thought you said running out of time.
He was running out of time. That's why you're doing it in the twilight.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Running out of daylight.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he'd be working till dark, and then first he got that little Tuffy garden tractor for plowing with. You
Yeah.
remember that? And then he rigged up a roller behind it, so you'd sit on the roller. He put a seat on the roller, and I got jobs rolling people's lawns because that was a big deal. The first thing in the spring before you mow your lawn, you'd roll it. No one does that anymore, but it was supposed to compact all the frost heavings. And then we got the wheel horse, the four-wheeled garden tractor, and um, we'd haul mowers down to the office in it. And later he could even
Yeah.
tow the boat.
I used to pull the boat back and forth down to the office garage.
Yeah, yeah. Even Betsy learned to drive on that tractor. I think Hannah did too. We had driving experience before we were old enough to get a permit from, and
That was a good little tractor.
yeah, well, there were several of them. He went through, the first one was a belt, variable belt one, and then we got newer ones as the time went on. So lots of stories about Dad. One of the famous stories of Mom's was when they were building the house, the same contractor was building Founders Hall, the gymnasium at Bluffton College. And the load of bricks that they brought, they were similar colored bricks, but the bricks for our house were supposed to have dark ones mixed in. And when they brought them, they were all the same color. And Mom said, no, that's not right. And no, they wouldn't listen to her. So they unloaded them. And then Dad was over at Founders Hall talking to the contractors, and they had picked out all the dark colored bricks that had been delivered there by mistake. And so the house wound up being the same color as Founders Hall without the dark bricks mixed in. That would have made it a lot more interesting, but they'd already started laying the bricks when they found this out. So it was too late. And
I didn't know about that.
yeah. And the other thing was the green glass that they used. It's been torn out now. It was in the main bathroom upstairs and the kitchen. It was the wrong color, and she tried to stop from delivering that. I don't know what color it was supposed to be, but
it was supposed to be a lighter green. It would have been really nice, and they just wouldn't listen to women back then. Mom was furious about it. And,
yeah,
So.
But she had the kitchen counters built at 36 inches because she was tall, and 32 was the standard at that point. And then, do you remember the GE stove with the colored lights on the buttons when you press a different button for the different temperatures?
My arm remembers it well.
Yes,
I was playing with those buttons because there were all these pretty colors, and I slipped when I pressed on one of them, and the burner had been on for a while, and put all my weight on my forearm right on the burner.
Yeah.
And had quite a burn on my arm. It took about 3 or 4 years before the scar started to disappear, and then it totally went away.
Oh, it don't have no scar, huh? Yeah, I
absolutely
remember
no
that.
Scar eventually. Yeah,
that's pretty good because I remember your screaming and the burn. It was quite a thing. And then we got the dishwasher. That was a big deal. One of the first dishwashers, and a top loading dishwasher.
I didn't know we were ahead of the game there. We were behind the game on TVs. I think
Right.
we're the last one in town to get a TV.
One of the last, yeah. You remember Baker's having the little one down in the basement and watching Howdy Doody?
Yeah, I remember going down there and watching Howdy Doody there. Yeah. I never did see. What was it? The Mickey Mouse show. I don't think. I might have seen it later, but
no, we didn't get Mickey Mouse.
Barb talks about the Mickey. Huh?
Yeah, we only got CBS at first because we had a 60-foot tower to pick up WSPD, Channel 13 in Toledo, which was CBS. And then WTOL came along later with NBC, but we didn't get ABC until I'd left home. So, and that was, I think Disney was on ABC.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So we had to live with one channel, and then Lima came on with UHF and gave us a few more choices. But you know, 1, 2, and 3 channels is what we grew up with.
Yeah.
Sunday,
Who got to walk up to the TV and change the channel?
well, there wasn't a lot of choice, so
Yeah.
nothing compared to what it would be now. We had it up in the study, or the den at first, and then we fixed up. Dad made the rumpus room downstairs, and the TV moved down there. So
Got to move this around here a little bit.
yeah.
That's better.
Well, we're all over the map here. I don't know whether any of this it'll tell more about us than our parents probably, but
yeah, I was going to say,
what kind of characters we are.
Yeah.
So, well, let's go into our adulthood.
Well, why don't we cover Dad operating on Phyllis Diller? That was a big
Oh
event.
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
because
you were still
you
home.
know, so Phyllis Diller lived in Bluffton for a while after she graduated from Bluffton College, I believe it was.
And while she was at Bluffton
Mom
College.
and a bunch of other women, and what's that?
It was while she was at Bluffton College, and then I think a year or two afterwards.
Yeah, she lived up there on Main Street with that house with the oval or circular window in it. And then this is before she ever got involved in you know, entertainment or whatever. And then Dad delivered 3 of her kids or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
While she lived in Bluffton.
Yeah.
So then Mom and a bunch of the women were friends with her, and then they stayed in touch over the years after Phyllis became popular. And then she needed to have a hysterectomy at one point, and she called up Dad and asked him about just for a second opinion, and Dad goes, yeah, that sounds about right. And you know, he sort of said, well, why don't you come here to Bluffton and do it, you know, and he just sort of threw it out there jokingly. And then a week later she calls back and says, were you serious? And he goes, well, I really wasn't, but I could be if you're interested, you know. So then he checked her into the Bluffton Hospital under you know, maiden name or whatever. And
Phyllis
then
Driver was her name.
Was that it? Okay.
Driver.
So
yeah.
then he did the hysterectomy on her, and a day or two later, the hospital gets a phone call and said, "This is Bob Hope. I'd like to speak with Phyllis Diller." And whoever it was started making all these jokes because they had no clue Phyllis Diller was there. You know, only a couple people knew. And she made all these jokes, and he goes, I'm serious. I know Phyllis Diller's there. This is Bob Hope, and I want to talk to Phyllis Diller. You know, and they're all going, what? So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So then he got through to Phyllis, and then within a day, she was over at our house for another couple of days to recuperate. That's why the one bed said Phyllis Diller slept here, whatever. So.
And what I heard was that when Robert Goulet sent flowers through the Bluffton florist, that's what gave it away, and that's why they moved her out of the hospital and into Marcia's room. But I wasn't there.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, that was, and her laugh, you know, a 19-bed hospital, was her laugh, you could hear it all over the whole hallway.
Well, she was down at one end, supposedly. I don't know.
That laugh was pretty, yeah, she was joking about it afterwards. Her name for Dad was Sawbones. And one of her jokes was the last thing she saw was the rabbit's foot hanging around Sawbones' neck when she went under. And then the other joke was that they found an old skate key in her uterus. That,
I never knew. She did jokes on that?
Yeah, those are the two jokes. The skate key they found, and you know what a skate, well, probably our children aren't going to know what skate keys are. We had roller skates
Yeah.
that flipped onto your shoes, and there was a key that had a rectangular socket, and you tighten the screw with the key to clamp the skates onto your shoes. So that's what a skate key was. I'm assuming rabbit's feet will still have some historical memory, but
Hey,
uh,
Evil Knievel jumped with a rabbit's foot around his neck.
oh, really?
Yep. Because I was at the museum and they have an Evil Knievel museum in Topeka, Kansas, and they had a virtual reality thing where you could put the goggles on and you sat on a bolted down motorcycle, and the guy's showing you how how it looks. They did a reenactment of one of his jumps, and the guy was wearing Evil's jumpsuit, and he said, when you look down, notice that you got a rabbit's foot around your neck. So he always jumped with that rabbit's foot around his neck. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's come back to how our lives unfolded. You went off to Baldwin Wallace College to in '65. Well, when you graduated from high school and I graduated from Worcester, Mom gave us a summer trip to Europe, and we flew over on a charter super constellation that I think the College of Worcester had, and we had to stop at Gander, Newfoundland, and it was 17 hours on that plane. Very loud piston engine plane, and again at Shannon in Ireland, and we got into they just opened Gatwick. There was a new airport, and then we spent a couple days at the friend's house that her friends, what were their names? The ones that Marcia stayed with when she.
oh, the
whatchamacallit?
Wallens?
The Wallens,
Wallen?
yeah. And,
That was in Switzerland. That's in Geneva or something.
well, that's where they were, but they also turned us on. They were Quakers, so they knew about Friend's house, so that's where we stayed. Do you
No,
remember how miserable?
In London, and was that they're the ones that turned us on to that? Yeah, that was amazing. We're sitting there, and the food was terrible, because it was a family dinner type environment. And then at the end of dinner, they pass a bowl of fruit around, and it's the people ahead of us got an apple, and all of a sudden they're taking a knife and fork and cutting into this apple. So you and I took bananas because we knew we were safe, and then they cut the banana up with a knife and fork.
I don't remember that.
What the hell's going on here? That's the most bizarre 3 nights in my life of being around people that I'm like, what the heck? That was bizarre.
And we were getting on the London Underground, and we were near the British Museum. I remember that. And my favorite memory of it was cold and dreary, and but the Turner Museum with the seascapes was one thing I remember. But we didn't go to the Tower Bridge. Yvonne and I did that a couple of years ago, but we somehow missed that. We were pretty jet lagged, although it wasn't even a jet, it was prop lagged, and the noise of those propellers, and I didn't get my hearing back for a while. But
I was airsick the whole way over there. I dreaded
really?
The entire 2.5 months we were there. I dreaded the whole time about being airsick all the way home. And then we sat over the wing coming home, and wasn't sick at all. Where we sat in the back of the airplane, you could see the whole airplane bending from the back row.
Yeah.
You could see the fuselage bend a foot or two. It was unbelievable. I was like, what? So it's amazing. I had anything to do with aviation after that.
Yeah. So then we suffered through 3 days in London, and took the train and the ferry to, I think it was Holland. The next thing I remember was we went to the Madura Dam. That was wonderful, the little miniature village. And it's The Hague, I think is where it is. And then we wanted to go into the World Court. And we went around the entire block, a huge block of this institution, and discovered if we'd gone the other direction, it was only like 50 feet. It became a joke of how we'd go around the wrong direction of things that we were trying to get into.
And I remember going in the subway with you, and you always knew where north and south was. What did I care? You know, well, I think we're going north now. And I go, what the hell? You guys, you're crazy. You know, you kept track of everything.
Well, and we went down the, we took a train to Wolfsburg, where we were picking up a 65 Beetle. They'd sold it to us at the dealer in Lima. And they said that they were open on Saturdays. And we got there on Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock. We heard the factory whistle when we got off the train, and they aren't open on Saturday. So we had to spend a weekend in Wolfsburg, which, you remember how boring that was?
Yeah, it's the most boring place. And it was a pretty town. You just went, wow, these poor guys have to live here.
Yeah, it was a planned community in the 60s or whatever, 50s. So it was nothing of interest at all. And then we got the car, and then, Monday morning we go in, and the entire Dutch police force have come to pick up a fleet of Volkswagens for their police, and they're getting priority. So we waited and waited. It was around noon when we finally got our car, and then there was something wrong with it, and they had to take it back. And finally, I think it was in the afternoon, we got to drive away in the car.
Yeah.
And we went down the Moselle to, we went to Lauders in Lindau on Bodensee.
Lindau.
Yeah. And we stayed with them.
The Lauders were, Lischen was a German exchange student in Bluffton. That's why we knew the Lauders for them.
Right, yeah.
That was going on.
She was with the triplets, Norm triplets.
Yeah.
And it was there that we met the sister Gisela, who was, Lischen was the oldest, and she was kind of tight-lipped and not very talkative, but Gisela was the opposite. And she was all over the place, really lively. And somehow or other, we wound up having her as our tour guide for a week or so, remember? And
yeah, we traveled with her for about a week, yeah.
Yeah, we wound up in Vienna. That's where we put her on the train to go back. But she toured us through, well, let's see. I don't remember too much between there and Vienna. But Marcia was in Vienna that summer. And we went through, we saw the Wallens in Geneva, but I don't think Gisela was with us.
Yeah.
I'm confused. We had Gisela and we wound up in Vienna. We also went over to Paris, and we didn't want to take the car into Paris, so we parked it out in the outskirts. And I was afraid to get stolen, so I took the distributor rotor out and took that with us. And remember, we didn't like French much at all, so we would butcher the subway names and with our terrible English. We were bad.
Yeah, they weren't very nice to us. I remember that.
Yeah, we were, and we had then we went on down to, went through the Swiss Alps to northern Italy, and wound up in Venice. That was my favorite, was Venice. And again, we left the car out in the outskirts and took a train in.
Yeah, we went to the Matterhorn just before that, though.
Oh, yes. And you got sunburned.
I took my shirt off.
Yeah.
I took my shirt off for 30 minutes when we were having a picnic up at the base of the Matterhorn, and I fried my chest. And the whole time we were in Venice, I couldn't even sleep. I had blisters on my chest like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
It was the most miserable time. No air conditioning. You know.
Yeah, I remember you were putting Nivea cream on your
In
burn.
Italy, we speak Italian. In Italy, we speak Italian. You know, and the French weren't much better either.
Yeah.
We got back to the car. We pulled out the map of France and says, where's the closest border? And we drove directly to the border, and then we started the trip from there.
Yeah.
So we pretty much went straight east, I think. So
Yeah, yeah, and then down into Switzerland. Well, that was a wild summer. Of course, I had met Sally, who became my wife, and um, Sally Winkler, Hannah's mother.
you
And
had or had not met her?
well, I had met her because we met in April, my senior year, and she was a sophomore. So, was that? Yeah, I drove her down to Birmingham after graduation and met her parents. And then we corresponded. That the way you got letters was through American Express. So we'd be writing letters through the summer. And then she came up to Bluffton before I went off to medical school. Um, but then we got married the middle of the next year. I had my first year in Boston alone, and she came out for Thanksgiving, and I think I went to went to Birmingham for Christmas, I think. But anyway, the famous thing I remember about you and Baldwin Wallace was it was on the approach to BWI. No, not BWI. What's Cleveland Hopkins? Is that Hopkins?
Cleveland Hopkins.
Yeah. And so you were a business major, but you got the airplane bug. And I had a private pilot's license from the summer of '63. And but you became the pilot, and instead of going into business, what you enlisted in the Air Force?
Yeah, I signed up for the Air Force because I was in the Vietnam era, and basically I only thought of it because the planes would fly right over the campus, which was also over the football field, and right in the middle of practice you'd have to stop, and I'd watch this airplane flying over, and the breeze is blowing through your helmet, and it felt so good. And I think my junior year I wonder how that guy gets that job. I was pretty fascinated with how much power they had because they were mostly 707s, the big old
Yeah.
four engines, and they'd be in a crosswind when they flew over our campus, and they'd be crabbing, so they're side slipping. And I was pretty obsessed with the amount of power, and I thought it was pretty cool. And then I forgot all about it. And then my senior year, I thought the same thing, and I went, oh yeah, I wonder how they do get that job. So then that's when I decided I might as well go in the Air Force. And I applied to the Air Force and the Navy, but that's what I was told was the best chance to do it. And realistically, if it wasn't for Vietnam, I never would have been an airline pilot because there was a shortage of pilots in that time period. So I didn't even realize that till about 5 years ago. I said, yeah, if it wasn't for Vietnam, I never would have been a pilot because those pilot slots all went to Air Force Academy guys, and
Yeah.
as long as they can fill them, they didn't go out to the general public. But they needed so many pilots that they threw it open. If you had the aptitude, you had to pass the aptitude test and other stuff, and then get accepted. So
What was
that's
pilot
how I did
training
it.
like? You got accepted to the Air Force.
What's that?
You got accepted to the Air Force, and then where was your pilot training, and what was that like?
That was in West Texas, in Big Spring, Texas, and about in the middle of nowhere, 6 hours from any civilization for the most part. And it was a lot of work. I'll tell you. I thought, what do you do after about a month or two? I figured you knew everything you needed to know. Boy, was I wrong. I never worked so hard for anything in my life. And then they washed out a certain percentage of you. So, if you had an instructor that didn't like you, then you were in big trouble. And I had just a quick story in that you did a prop plane for the first month, and that was so they could wash you out. If you weren't any good, they could wash you out without spending much money on an expensive airplane. So, I was going through that, and this first day that we had crosswind landings, my instructor was just yelling and screaming at me the whole time. And then we come in, I'm trying to figure out how to land this in a crosswind because the controls are one way and your rudders, yeah, you're stepping on the opposite rudder and you're moving the power all over the place. And we start taxiing in, and this guy says, "Boy, I wish my other students could catch on like you do." And
Oh, wow.
I went, "What did you say?" And he says, "You're really catching on." I said, "Wish all these other students." I was like the third student of the day. You know, it's the end of the day, third or fourth student for him. I think he had 2 in the morning and then 2 in the afternoon or something. But he said, "I wish these other guys would catch on like you do. You're really catching on." I said, "You've got to be kidding me. All you've done is yell and scream and belittle me the whole time." And I said, "I'll tell you right now, if you quit yelling at me, I'll do 3 times better." I said, "I know when I screw up. You don't have to be telling me I'm screwing up. You don't have to be yelling and screaming at me." I said, "You know, you need to be thinking about flying the airplane, not thinking bad thoughts about you, you know." And he did. After that, he backed off, and we got along real well. But it was his first assignment in the Air Force for teaching guys, and I guess he thought you're supposed to yell at everybody or something.
Oh, right.
So,
Like the boot camp guys.
well, and a lot of guys did. You go in the military, they don't kiss your ass and be nice to you. They're screaming at you. I had a lot of screamers and for flight instructors. I had some real holy terrors that should never have been instructors, that didn't do anything to help improve you. All they did was just try to tear you apart, you know.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
So then you wound up, you were trained to fly a DC-3, was it? And they got you to Vietnam, but they changed the seats so you wouldn't fit in the seats?
Yeah, they put some shoulder straps on. DC-3 was built for short people in, you know, World War II era, before that actually. And when they got it to Vietnam, in the States, I had to take the bottom seat cushion out and sit on the hard thing. I took a towel, I sat on this towel on this hard wooden base of the seat where normally this 6-inch seat cushion sat up there. And then I could just barely get the yoke over my knee in a crosswind landing because the yoke came up on an angle, you know, and on a crosswind landing, your one knee's back up to your chin practically. And I couldn't get the yoke over my knee on a crosswind landing. I could there, but in Vietnam, they added like a 4-inch block on the back of the seat for shoulder straps that they didn't have them on the stateside DC-3s. And so I got to Vietnam and I couldn't begin to get the thing over my knee. So then I forced them to get me out of the airplane, and I went into the O2B, which is the twin-engine Cessna Super Skymaster. It had loudspeakers on it and talked people into surrendering. That was a good deal. I enjoyed that airplane. But I really enjoyed, I didn't like getting assigned to the DC-3. I got sort of stuck in it. But I wouldn't trade that 80 hours that I got in the DC-3. I wouldn't trade that for anything. That was pretty awesome overall. When you look back at it, you know, it's pretty unique, you know. And I had my DC-3 instructor was awesome in the States. He was easy ed. He was so amazing and good and relaxed. I loved him to death, you know. It was amazing. And I was basically done with the DC-3 training in about half the time because he was so good, and we go out and do other stuff, and I just had a lot of fun with him. We had a low-level mission. We were flying along in Louisiana down low at whatever it was, 500 feet. You can't see squat, but you've made your map out ahead of time, and you're following the lines, and then you turn and you turn to a heading of 060, and you fly that for so many miles, and you've figured out about the time, you know, and if your airspeed's right, it should be right. And you go along, and if you're lost, you still turn, and you try to keep doing these things. And after 2 or 3 legs, if they're not matching up, you're just damn lost. And we're going along, and I told Easy Ed, I said, I don't know about you, but I'm lost. And he says, I'm lost too. And so then we flew across this interstate highway, you know, or some small highway. And I looked down the road, and I said, there's a town over that way, let's go over there because all towns have a water tower with their name written on them. And he goes, really? So we flew down to this town. We circled the water tower, saw the name of it. He says, oh, and now I know where we are. And he goes, you're pretty smart, kid. He said, I never realized water towers had names on them, the name of the town on them, but that's what Bluffton did. I thought that was just common sense, you know. So,
I never heard that story. So what was
yeah.
it like being in Vietnam overall? Like you said you found bullet holes once in your plane, but you didn't really have.
Not in my airplane. No, I never had any bullet holes.
Oh.
There was a guy in North Vietnam that would fly low to try to get some bullet holes in his airplane because he thought he was going to be a hero or something. But no, I never got hit. But generally speaking, if you did get hit, you would know it because you'd either hear the thud or you'd be losing fuel or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the Skymaster, you'd circle at about 2,500 feet and you'd set the props at 2,000 RPM or 2,200. And this loudspeaker would aim at the ground and you play a little tape recording of some propaganda thing like, you know, why don't you surrender before we come back and, you know, attack you again or whatever. And it's just about getting people to surrender so you didn't have to have people get killed, you know, trying to get these people out of there. There are a lot of people out in the countryside that wanted to get out of there because they were forced down from the north to fight in the south. And we would explain that if you take one of these leaflets in with you, a Chu Hoi leaflet, then if you showed that leaflet and held it up over your head, you know, you could surrender. And if for every rifle you turned in, you got $75, I think it was, and 2 bags of rice. And boy, that was a big incentive for people in those days. So, but, yeah, so I got like 800 or 900 hours, almost 1,000 hours in the O2B flying around over there. And that was fun too. You know, you'd go out in the morning and you'd fly for 4 hours. You land for lunch at, I went into Tan Son Nhut a lot because I was out of Phan Rang in the south. You go in and you meet another pilot for lunch because you talk about ahead of time. If the other guy's flying in your area, you go, well, let's meet for lunch at 1 o'clock. So you go to the officers club and have lunch, and then you go take off and fly again for another 3 or 3.5 hours, and you go back to your base, and then you go have dinner, and then you go, oh, let's go to the movie. I remember a new kid showing up, and he goes, well, what's on at the movie? And we went, we don't know, you know. He goes, what do you mean you go in the movie and you don't have a clue what's your plan? We said, yeah, well, you know, because it's either I think a nickel or 25 cents. I said, if it's 25 cents, it's a good first run movie, you know. And if it's a nickel, it's still worth going to because every once in a while, some of those are really good. And if you don't like it, after 30 minutes, you leave and you go back up to the barracks and you play darts. And we've killed a half hour walking down to the movie theater, standing in line, getting this, killed a half hour at the movie theater, and you killing 15 or 20 minutes walking back up to the barracks. And it's something to do, you know. And this guy was just like shaking his head, and before long, he's in the routine too. That's what you did, you know. So,
did you have any experience in any of the Vietnamese cities and the horrors that were going on later on, or were you pretty insulated from the?
No, we were really insulated. I got in a Jeep near Phan Rang and drove over towards where there was a beach one time and looked around there and then drove back to the base and then down in, I don't know if it was Benoit's where we flew into or Tan Son Nhut. Somebody drove me around in town there one time for a little bit. And, you know, I decided I didn't even care to look. I said, it's not worth me getting blown up by somebody that singles us out for what I'm seeing here. I mean, I got to see a little bit and that was it. And it didn't matter to me. I just wanted to come home in one piece. That's all I cared about. You know? And when you're on the base, you're totally isolated. The guys you feel sorry for are the guys in the Army that are out there in the middle of nowhere and they're getting rained on, and here I am going to an officers club to eat dinner. The worst thing that happened to us was, geez, they're out of cheese. So there goes the pizza, the ham and cheese sandwich, and a couple other things. And then when they get the cheese in, well, then you couldn't have a cheeseburger either. You could have regular hamburger. So then when cheese comes back in, you ate all those things, and then they'd be out of something else, or out of ice cream, or whatever, But those were the terrible things we had to put up with, and the boredom of it. At nighttime, you get sort of tired of not doing stuff. But
now I remember I gave you a bag full of laughs for Christmas. I think it was 70 or 71. And you said you used to key your mic and make it laugh, and the orbiting 707 above you would get pissed off that they didn't know who it was. You remember that?
I don't remember that. Yeah, probably so. But
yeah,
you'd play jokes on different people or whatever.
Yeah, that was. I think that was the year before Pet Rocks. It was the bag full of laughs, and it was a little bag, and you press the button and go ho ho ho, and just one of your activities to. I think you were a prankster.
Well, when I was in officers training school, you would be a underclassman, and then you'd have an older, the guys that were 6 weeks ahead of you or a month ahead, I think 6 weeks ahead of you. Oh, they'd be at the upperclassmen, and they'd do all this stuff. And we had a jerk that was, you'd march over to the chow hall, and you'd stand out there, and they'd harass you and do all this other stuff. And Mom had one of these little hour timers that you could keep track of the parking meter. You put 15 minutes in the parking meter, and you turn this thing, and you be someplace, and you hear it go bzzz in your pocket, and you go, oh, I got to put more money in the meter. So I would carry that sucker, and I'd stick it in my pocket, and I'd set it for like 20 minutes or something, because I knew about how long it was going to take before we get in the chow hall. And I'd be standing in the chow hall. We'd all be standing there at parade rest, and this jerk would be walking up and down trying to harass you about stuff. And all of a sudden, this buzzer goes off and stop. And he's looking back there, and it's like, he's 5 or 6 of us, but he had no clue who it was. And he's going, Officer Trainee Travis, was that you? No, sir. And every one of us said, no, sir. Oh, God, the guys around me would just die laughing because we just jerked this guy's chain all the time. It was a lot of fun. You got to do something to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Well, then after the, what you said, you were the world's highest paid litter bug and gas station jockey, and a bullshit bomber. Is that what you called it?
Yeah. The DC-3 dropped the leaflets. They were cut the size of a dollar bill. Those are the ones that you surrendered with. And they had different messages on them. And you drop those 30,000 in a box out of the back of a DC-3. And that's what their mission was. And
I thought you dropped leaflets too.
Just the DC-3 did that. So I didn't. I did when I was flying the DC-3, but when I was getting checked out in country, they never got me signed off because I couldn't be signed off because I couldn't fly it in the crosswind. And I told them I forced them to let me out of the airplane, and then I went to the Skymaster after that. So. And
then you were wound up in the KC-135s, and where was that in Vietnam?
That was it. I came back from Vietnam, went to Merced, and went to training for KC-135s, and I was at Travis Air Force Base out there in California, near Davis, and well, what was it?
In Fairfield.
I can't even think of that. Fairfield, that was it. Yeah.
Another story I remember you told me was you were late getting back, and you were technically AWOL, and the guy at the gate saw your name was Travis and said you're the colonel's son or something like that, and you nodded your head. Do you remember that story?
No, I don't remember that story. No.
Oh, I'm remembering more of your stories than you are.
I don't think that ever happened. I got in trouble going to the alert facility one time because I was trying to get in, and I pulled out my ID badge, and the guy looks at it. And as I pulled it out, I remembered that my aircraft commander had drawn a mustache on me because I looked like Meathead from All in the Family. And he drew this mustache on there. And then I liked it, so I put Scotch tape over the top of it, And so then he goes ballistic because I've defaced United States military ID badge, And I'm going, come on, buddy, it's just a joke. I'm late to get in. It's like, just give me a break, So.
Well, another story I remember you telling was when you were refueling and the boom pump didn't cut off and you were emptying your fuel tanks. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, I can't remember. I had a couple of those type of things. Yeah. But I would have just shut off some circuit breakers or whatever. Yeah. When I checked out as an aircraft commander, my first 10 flights, 6 of them terminated in emergencies. I shut my first 10 flights. I shut 2 different times. I shut down engines. I had an explosive decompression, and I had my boom got stuck out, hanging out behind the airplane. I was able to stow it so I could land, and forget what some of the other ones were.
Wow.
And then later on Friday the 13th, when I was getting checked out to be an aircraft commander just before that, I got hit by lightning on Friday the 13th. So,
wow.
So I've been hit by lightning twice, once in the Air Force and once in the airlines. So
the plane was, not you.
The plane was, yeah. It just goes through and dissipates out the back. In the Air Force, I think it took a chunk of metal off of the plane, and the same with and it knocked in one of those wire antennas from the from the behind the cockpit to the tail. That got knocked loose, but that could have been a little dangerous because that was dangling behind the airplane. Could have got stuck in the rudder, but yeah. I didn't know it was a problem. I didn't know that happened at the time.
So then you got out of the Air Force, and there were a glut of pilots at that point. I remember you were teaching flight school and waiting tables in Concord, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the story of how persistent you were to get into the airlines by showing up regularly, and that you had a big dossier, and when they'd start hiring you first.
I sent mailograms out all the time. They cost $5 a pop, and they'd go down to the Los Angeles office for American Airlines. And then finally, when somebody pulled it to look at it, and they go, "Oh my God, you've got the thickest file I've ever seen." And I go, "Yeah, you've noticed finally." But
you got hired by American and based in Texas.
Well, I went to New York City for 1 month, and then I came back. And then I went to Dallas, and for 7 years, and then to Chicago, something like that. So we're getting away from the family stuff. We're doing too much of this stuff.
Well, no, I think it's time for people to find out about you. I mean, this is I've already documented a lot of my life with other stuff, but you're an interesting character in the family tree. The last story I wanted to ask you about was the events on 9/11 when you were headed for JFK, and I remember you telling me, but it'd be better to hear.
Well, I was going from Zurich to Chicago.
Oh, Chicago! I thought you were going to JFK.
No, that would have been. I suppose it could have been, but I don't know. Because we did have we might have had a 6-day trip at that time. We had a few 6-day trips, one Chicago, Paris, Boston, Paris, Chicago, or instead of Boston, it might be JFK. I suppose it could have been a chance. I don't remember on that. But we were passing Paris when we got a message on that, on our little printer that said 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center, American Airlines ? And I told the first officer, I said, what do they mean ? They know where every one of our airplanes is, because they they have the readout off of radar, and they know your altitude, call sign, heading, everything. I mean, today it's even more sophisticated than ever, but you know, we didn't realize the transponders had been shut off on those planes, so they didn't know what it was. They didn't know where they were. And then we continued on. We got up to a little bit northeast of London, and then we got the message to turn around and go back to Zurich, and then we spent 3 days in Zurich waiting it out. So.
And you had to dump the fuel, was it, or else burn it off?
I just had to burn it off. I had to burn up an extra hour and a half, something like that. And I was holding over the Matterhorn roughly, and made a PA or two just because I didn't want people to think we'd been hijacked, but I couldn't tell them what had happened, and made the mistake of telling a couple of flight attendants, and they turned white, and then I had to say, okay, you can't tell anybody, you know, until we get on the ground, and so then after we landed in Zurich and parked the airplane, they parked us way away from everybody else because we were all considered security threats because they didn't know who was doing what, where. So then as they were getting off the airplane, well, once I parked the airplane, then I told them what happened, and I don't think one person said a word getting off the airplane. It was sort of amazing. So, and then Swiss security, they had security driving beside our buses all the way into town. I'm going, man, if anybody wants to do anything, they obviously know who to get, you know. But you know, Switzerland was as safe. That was the best deal you could get, was going back into Switzerland. I thought, because they all had the hotel rooms paid, and no more airplanes were coming out of the U.S. and nothing was going back. So the rooms were paid for 3 more nights, and so we just stayed there, went out and did stuff, and tried to tell the crew to turn the TV on for 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night, and then shut it off and go do stuff. Half the flight attendants didn't listen to that, and they were basket cases. But you know, it's pretty obviously nothing was going to. You can watch the news and knew we weren't going to be flying back the next day.
Well, you were only there 3 days. I thought they shut down for a week after the.
No, it was 3 days, and then they started to allow us to come back in, and then I've got this book on all about where they went into to Gander, Newfoundland, where they diverted a lot of the planes. And this one guy wrote a book on that. It's pretty interesting, and how they took care of the people there. But even reading that book, I said, man, that's a lot better deal being in Zurich where we were, and you can go out to dinner and do this. And I took my first officer and rode the train and boat over to Kuzenak am Rigi, which we really liked, and ate at this hotel that Barb and I'd stayed at, and had garlic lake perch and potatoes and really nice meal. The guy's going, wow, that's one of the best meals I've ever had, you know. It was pretty nice. So, but
You were with American for what, 25 years or
28 years. Retired 2 years early just because they were worried about pensions. Because there was a deal that if American declared bankruptcy, they could take a 30-year pension away from you. Even after you retired and had your money, they could still come back and take it away from you. So I retired 2 years early to get the clock running so that if we did declare bankruptcy, I might not lose that money. So, and I didn't lose it, so it worked out. And then later on, eventually they did declare bankruptcy. So, but I'd survived it.
Yeah.
What's that?
And so it didn't affect you. That's.
No, it didn't affect me, other than I retired 2 years sooner than I wanted to. I would have rather kept flying to right up to age 60 because I enjoyed the job, you know. And so, but well, I'm going to need to call it quits here for a little bit. We need to see whether this thing worked. If you want to do another one sometime, we can pick up someplace.
Yeah, well, I think it's. I'm sure the recording's there. There may be a few glitches, but maybe not. So, thank you for participating and for providing the Christmas tree in the background. And
Yes. No hassle, no problems. It'll be out there for, we'll keep it lit for about another 3 weeks or whatever, because we like looking at it. And I didn't get it up till Christmas Eve, I don't think. And except now all the snow is melting at the base of it. You can't see it, but at the base of it, it's a couple cement blocks and a bunch of snow that's turned into ice, but now everything's melting. So hopefully it won't fall down. Usually it doesn't fall down until about March 15th or so. And, when it falls over, then I go reclaim it for a round. So, and there's no mess in the house that way.
yes. Okay, well, I will stop the recording and say goodbye and thank you and keep warm.
Yeah.